All right, you beautiful bastards. Welcome back to the deep dive. You know how you get sucked into these online arguments about what's canon in your favorite stories?
Yeah.
We've all been there, right?
Happens all the time.
Someone drops a bombshell theory about Darth Vader's secret twin or some shit,
Oh, yeah.
and everyone loses their goddamn minds.
For sure.
So today we're tackling this whole canon conundrum.
Love it.
We've got a shitload of articles, fan theories, angry forum posts,
Yes.
the whole 9 yards.
Sounds like fun.
It's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, this is a fascinating topic, really, because on the one hand, it's all made up, right?
Sure.
It's fiction. But on the other hand, these fictional worlds can feel incredibly real to us.
For sure.
And we get invested in their internal consistency.
Yeah, you attach to the characters and the stories.
Exactly.
Okay, let's cut the crap for a second. What the hell is canon anyway?
Right.
Like, if I'm trying to explain this to my buddy who's been living under a rock,
Sure.
what's the simplest way to put it?
Think of it like this canon is the stuff that's considered official in a fictional universe.
Okay.
It's the storyline that's recognized as true by the creators, the publishers, the copyright holders, whoever's calling the shots.
So basically, it's the rule book for a fictional world.
Pretty much.
The stuff that actually happened,
Yeah,
even though it's all made up.
exactly. It's like the difference between playing a tabletop RPG by the book and just making shit up as you go along.
I can see that.
Canon provides a framework,
Right.
a shared understanding of what's real in that world.
Okay, I can dig that. But who the hell gets to decide what goes in this rule book?
Ah, the age-old question.
Is it always the original author? Or can anyone just waltz in and rewrite the damn story?
It's rarely that simple. Sometimes it's the author, sure, but things get messy when you bring in sequels, adaptations, reboots, all that jazz.
Yeah.
Publishers, copyright holders, even the fans themselves can have a huge influence on what's considered canon.
So it's like a goddamn power struggle over who controls the narrative.
You could say that.
That sounds fucked up.
It can be. Think about Oz, for example.
Wizard of Oz.
Well, you've got the original books by L. Frank Baum,
Right.
but then a ton of sequels written by other authors after his death.
Oh, wow.
Are those sequels canon?
Good question.
Some people say yes, some say no.
I can see both sides.
It gets even more complicated when you consider adaptations like the classic film The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, everyone knows that movie.
Right.
But it sure as hell doesn't follow the book exactly.
Nope.
So which one's more canon?
It depends on who you ask, and that's the thing about canon. It can be subjective, contested, and constantly evolving. Oh, so annoying. Take Sherlock Holmes for another example. Arthur Conan Doyle wrote the original stories, but there have been countless adaptations and sequels over the years.
Yes, so many.
Which ones are real Sherlock Holmes stories?
Well, I guess it depends on how much you're willing to geek out about it, right?
Yes, for sure.
If you're a casual fan, maybe you don't give a shit.
Right.
But if you're a hardcore Sherlockian, you probably have strong opinions about what's true to the character.
Precisely. And it's not just about individual opinions. It's about entire communities built around these fictional universes.
Yeah, the fans are hardcore.
They invest time, energy, even emotion into these stories, so they care deeply about what's considered canon.
So you're saying messing with canon is like messing with their religion?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So when someone fucks with the canon, it's not just changing a story, it's pissing off a whole lot of people.
You could say that, and we've seen some epic battles over canon in recent years. Remember what happened with Star Wars?
Oh, hell yeah. When Disney bought the franchise and decided to nuke the entire expanded universe,
Yeah.
the Legends bullshit,
That's the one.
people were losing their goddamn minds.
It was a massive upheaval. Disney essentially declared that all the comics, video games, everything outside the movies and a few select TV shows were no longer part of the official canon.
So all those stories that fans had been loving for decades were suddenly, non-existent, like they never happened?
Essentially, they were relegated to a separate tier of continuity, which Disney dubbed Legends.
Oh, yeah.
They're still out there,
Right?
but they're no longer considered part of the main storyline.
That's some cold-blooded shit, man. I bet the hardcore fans felt like they'd been stabbed in the back.
There was a lot of anger, confusion, and even sadness. People felt like their favorite characters and storylines were being erased, dismissed. It felt like a betrayal to some.
So basically Disney said, fuck your childhood memories, we're making our own canon now.
Well, it wasn't quite that blatant, but the message was clear. The new Star Wars movies and shows were the priority, and everything else had to fall in line.
All right, so Star Wars is a clusterfuck of canon controversy. What about other big franchises? How do they handle this whole mess?
Some are more flexible than others. Star Trek, for example, has a different approach.
Hit me with it. How do those Trekkies keep their shit straight?
They draw a clear line between canon and non-canon. The live-action TV shows and movies are considered the core canon, the stuff that really happened in the Star Trek universe.
So far, so good. What about all the books, comics, and video games? Are they just ignored?
Not entirely. They're considered part of the expanded universe, and while they're not generally considered canon, elements from those stories can sometimes migrate into the main continuity.
Okay, so it's like a semi-permeable membrane. Some stuff gets through, but most of it stays on the other side.
That's a good analogy. It allows for greater creative freedom in the expanded universe while still maintaining a sense of consistency in the core canon.
So Star Wars is like a dictatorship, and Star Trek is more of a constitutional monarchy.
Something like that, but let's not forget about the franchises that just say fuck it to the whole canon thing.
Oh yeah, give me an example. What kind of chaotic-ass universe just throws the rule book out the window?
Well, Doctor Who is a prime example.
Doctor Who, that show already makes my head spin with all the time travel and regenerating aliens.
Oh, no, right?
You're telling me they don't even bother with canon?
It's not that they don't bother. It's more like they have a very fluid and flexible approach to it. It's a show that's been running for almost 60 years with countless writers, actors, and producers, so they're bound to be inconsistencies and contradictions.
Just 60 years? That's longer than my goddamn attention span.
Right.
No wonder their canon is a mess.
Right, but that's kind of part of the charm. Doctor Who embraces the ambiguity. They acknowledge that there are different interpretations of the show's history, and they don't try to force a rigid canon on the fans.
So it's like a free-for-all. Everyone gets to decide what's real in the Doctor Who universe.
To a certain extent, yes. And that's where we get into the concepts of fanon and headcanon.
Hold up. Fanon and headcanon. Those sound like something you'd hear on a college campus after a bong rip. Are those actual terms?
They are, and they're crucial to understanding how fans engage with these fictional worlds. They're crucial to understanding how fans engage with these fictional worlds. Fanon refers to ideas or interpretations that become widely accepted within a fandom, even though they might not be officially recognized by the creators.
So, like, if enough people believe that Jar Jar Binks is actually a Sith Lord pulling the strings from behind the scenes.
That would be Fanon, a popular but unconfirmed theory that spreads throughout the fan base.
Dude, that would actually explain a lot. I'm going to start spreading that rumor. Jar Jar the Sith mastermind.
Be my guest. But the point is, Fanon allows fans to fill in the gaps, to explore possibilities that the official canon might not have addressed.
Okay, I get it. Fanon is like the Wild West of canon. Anything goes. What about headcanon? Is that just fan fiction in your brain?
You could say that headcanon is your own personal interpretation of a story or character, even if it contradicts the official canon.
So basically, I can create my own little corner of the Star Wars universe where Luke Skywalker turns to the dark side and joins forces with Emperor Palpatine.
Exactly. It's your own private sandbox where you get to decide what's true. It doesn't have to make sense to anyone else.
That's actually kind of cool. It's like having your own personal director's cut of the movie in your head.
Precisely. And it's a way for fans to connect with the stories they love on a deeper, more personal level.
Okay, so Fanon and headcanon are like the unofficial side quests of canon. They're not part of the main storyline, but they can be a lot of fun to explore. But let's get real for a second. Does any of this fan shit actually matter? Does it ever influence the official story?
More often than you might think, creators do pay attention to what's happening in their fan communities. They see the theories, the discussions, the passionate arguments.
So you're telling me that screaming into the void of the internet can actually make a difference?
Sometimes it's not always about direct influence, but more about understanding what resonates with the fans.
Give me an example. Has Fanon ever become canon?
There are cases where fan theories or popular fanon elements have been incorporated into official canon. Remember when they brought Boba Fett back in? The Mandalorian. A lot of that was driven by fan demand.
Holy shit, you're right. The fans wouldn't shut up about Boba Fett. And finally, Disney caved. The power of the internet compels you.
It's not always that straightforward, but you get the idea. Creators are aware of the power of fan communities, and they're not always immune to their influence.
All right, that's pretty wild. So Fanon can sometimes climb the ladder and become canon. But what about all the other franchises out there, the ones that aren't Star Wars or Star Trek? How do they navigate this canon minefield?
It really depends. Some are very strict about what they consider canon, while others are more relaxed. It often comes down to the complexity of the fictional universe, the number of creators involved, and the level of fan engagement.
Okay, give me an example of a franchise that's really anal about their canon, besides Star Wars, obviously. I'm still a little salty about that whole Legends thing.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe is a good example. They have a massive interconnected storyline spanning multiple movies and TV shows, and they're very careful about keeping it all consistent.
Yeah, the MCU is like a giant sprawling city built on a foundation of canon. One wrong move and the whole damn thing could collapse.
That's a good analogy. They have a team dedicated to tracking every detail, every character arc, every little Easter egg. It's a massive undertaking, but it's crucial to maintaining the integrity of their universe.
So basically, Marvel Studios is the ultimate canon police. They're the ones who decide what's real and what's not.
Pretty much they have the final say on what's considered canon in the MCU.
Well, they've done a pretty damn good job so far. Those movies rake in billions, so they must be doing something right.
Absolutely. And it shows that a well-managed canon can be a powerful tool for storytelling.
Okay, I can see that. But even the most carefully crafted canon can have its flaws.
Right.
There are always going to be inconsistencies, plot holes, retcons.
Of course, no fictional universe is perfect, and as a franchise evolves over time, it's inevitable that some things will get changed, reinterpreted, or even completely forgotten.
It's like that game of telephone we played as kids. The message gets passed around. By the time it gets back to the beginning, it's completely different.
Exactly. And with canon, it's not just a silly message. It's characters, storylines, entire worlds that people have invested in.
So what you're saying is that canon is a fluid concept. It's always changing, evolving, getting messed with.
That's one way to put it, and it highlights the challenges faced by creators and fans alike when it comes to navigating these fictional universes.
Multiple creators, multiple interpretations, multiple headaches for the fans trying to keep it all straight. It's enough to make you want to give up and stick to reality.
But where's the fun in that fiction is about escaping reality, about exploring different worlds and possibilities, and canon, for all its complexities, helps to ground those worlds to make them feel more real.
Okay, I get it. A good story can transport you to another place, make you forget about your shitty job and your mounting bills. But sometimes the canon police can be a real buzzkill. They're always there to remind you that your favorite theory is wrong, or that your beloved character never actually did that cool thing you thought they did.
That's true, and there are definitely some fans who take canon way too seriously, but I think it's important to remember that it's ultimately in service of the story.
Okay, so how do we as fans navigate this whole canon mess without losing our minds? Do we just pick and choose what we believe? Do we create our own personal headcanon and ignore everything else? Do we just say fuck it and embrace the chaos? Okay, so how do we as fans navigate this whole canon mess without losing our minds? Do we just pick and choose what we believe? Do we create our own personal headcanon and ignore everything else? Do we just say fuck it and embrace the chaos?
There's no one-size-fits-all answer. It really depends on your own personal relationship with the fictional world.
Okay.
Some people find comfort in a rigid canon, while others prefer a more flexible approach.
So you're basically saying, figure it out yourself, buddy. That's not very helpful, Professor.
Fair enough. But I do think there are a few key things to keep in mind. First, don't be afraid to question canon.
Okay.
Just because something is officially recognized doesn't mean it's beyond criticism or interpretation.
Okay, so think critically. Don't just blindly accept everything you're told.
Yep.
Got it. What else?
Second, be respectful of other fans' interpretations, even if you disagree with them.
Okay, so don't be a dick about it. Even if someone's headcanon is completely bonkers, I can handle that.
And finally, don't let canon dictate your enjoyment of the story. If you love a particular character or storyline, even if it's not technically canon, then embrace it. Ultimately, it's your experience that matters most.
Words of wisdom, Professor. So what you're saying is canon is like a goddamn choose-your-own-adventure book.
Yeah.
You can follow the main path, or you can go off the rails and explore the weird side quests.
Right.
And either way, it's a valid experience.
I like that analogy. It captures the idea that there's no one right way to engage with canon. It's about finding what works for you and enjoying the ride.
And if you run into some canon purists along the way, just hit them with a stun blast and keep on trucking.
Well, let's try to be a little more diplomatic than that, but I agree it's important to not let the canon debates ruin your enjoyment.
All right. I'll try to play nice, but let's be real. Some of these canon arguments can get pretty heated, like people screaming at each other on Twitter about whether a certain character is actually bisexual or whatever.
That's true, and it's important to remember that everyone brings their own experiences and perspectives to these discussions. What might seem like a minor detail to one person could be deeply meaningful to another.
Yeah, I get that representation matters and all that, but sometimes it feels like people are looking for things to be offended by. Like, chill out. It's just a fictional story.
I think there's a balance to be struck. It's great to be passionate about the stories you love and to advocate for the kind of representation you want to see. But it's also important to remember that creators are human and they're going to make mistakes.
And sometimes they're just going to say, Fuck the fans, I'm doing what I want.
Well, yes, that happens too, but I think most creators genuinely care about their fans and want to tell good stories, and sometimes that means making tough decisions about canon that might not please everyone.
All right, fair enough. So if we're wrapping this shit up, what's the takeaway here? What do we want our listeners to remember about this whole canon conundrum?
I think the most important thing is to remember that canon is a tool, not a rule. It's a framework for understanding a fictional world, but it's not meant to be restrictive or limiting.
And if you find yourself getting bogged down in the weeds of canon debates, just remember it's all made up.
Well, yes, that's true. But I think there's still value in exploring these questions. It helps us to understand how stories are created and how they evolve over time. And it can even teach us a thing or two about ourselves and how we interact with the world around us.
Deep, man. Deep. So what you're saying is, even though it's all bullshit, it's bullshit that matters.
Something like that. Ultimately, it's about finding the joy in these fictional worlds and appreciating the ways they can connect us to each other.
All right, folks, there you have it. Canon. It's complicated, messy, and sometimes infuriating, but it's also a big part of what makes fiction so damn engaging.
And as always, the most important thing is to have fun with it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you'll, excuse me, I'm going to go rewatch the prequels and pretend that Jar Jar Binks is actually a Sith Lord. What wicked could happen?
Of course, of course.
And for those of you listening, we want to hear your thoughts. What does canon mean to you? Does it even matter? Hit us up on social media with your hot takes and burning questions using the hashtag CanonChaos. And until next time, keep on diving deep.